Let's talk about power. It's a word you hear all the time, right? It shapes literally everything, from the news you read to the course of history. But here's the thing. For a word we throw around so much, it's actually pretty misunderstood. So yeah, what is it really? When you hear that a country is powerful, what image pops into your head? What are we actually talking about? For a long time, the answers seemed pretty simple, right? It was all about having the biggest army or the strongest economy. But today, well, the real story of power is way more complex and, honestly, way more interesting than just that. All right, so let's start with the old playbook, the classic traditional idea of power that's basically run international politics for, well, centuries. We're talking about hard power. Think of hard power as power at its most blunt. It's the classic carrots and sticks approach. You use economic goodies, the carrots, or you use military threats, the sticks, to make someone do what you want, even if they'd rather not. It's all about coercion, the power of command. And this idea is summed up perfectly by this classic quote from Hans Morgenthau. He basically said that all politics is just a struggle for power. For thinkers like him, the whole world is this constant battle for dominance, and hard power is the only thing that really matters. So what are the tools of hard power? Well, they're all things you can count, things that are tangible. We're talking about military force, economic strength, population size, territory, natural resources, even a country's industrial capacity. For ages, these were the stats you looked at to see who was on top. But that's just one side of the coin. In the world we live in today, this super interconnected world, just having a big stick isn't always enough. A whole new game is opened up, and it's built around something way more subtle, but just as powerful. It's called soft power. So look at it this way. Power really splits into two big ideas. You've got the push of hard power, right? Forcing people to do things. And then you have the pull of soft power, which is all about getting others to want the same things you want. A totally different approach. Let's really break this down. Hard power? It's all about coercion. It's that push strategy using carrots and sticks. But soft power? That's about attraction. It's a pull strategy using things like a country's culture, its values, its policies. It's really the difference between shoving someone in a direction and making them want to walk with you. Yeah, so the key thing to get here is that soft power has nothing to do with force. It's about getting others on your side willingly. It works when a country's culture, its political values, and its policies are seen as so attractive and legitimate that other countries just naturally want to follow its lead. Legitimacy is everything here. The guy who came up with this whole idea, Joseph Nye, said it rests on three main pillars. First up is culture. A country's movies, its music, its art, stuff that people around the world find cool and appealing. Second, you've got its political values, things like democracy and human rights. And this is a big if. It only works if the country actually practices what it preaches. And third, its foreign policies. They need to be seen by the rest of the world as being fair, legitimate, and having some kind of moral authority. And of course, like any big idea, it didn't just stop there. It's evolved. Other thinkers, like Jonathan McClory, came along and built on Nye's foundation. They added more specific sources of soft power, like a country's system of government, its diplomacy, its education system, and even its knack for business and innovation. Okay, so this brings up a really good question. If we're talking about governments and foreign policy, does that mean soft power is something only countries can have? Well, not anymore. The short answer is a big no. See, the whole landscape of power has shifted. It's not just governments calling all the shots these days. This pyramid here is a great way to understand this new power landscape. At the top, you have the agents. And notice, it's not just governments anymore. It could be an NGO, a big corporation, maybe even a famous celebrity. These agents work in different spheres, like culture, business, or education. And they use various instruments to get their message across. So, for example, an NGO, that's the agent, working in the human rights sphere, might publish a big report, that's the instrument, to build support and pressure a government. See how that works? Power is everywhere now. Okay, so we've got the push of hard power and the pull of soft power. But here's the thing. The smartest players on the world stage don't just pick one. They blend them together. And that's what we call a smart strategy. Smart power is really the art of skillfully combining hard and soft power. It's about being strategic, knowing when you need the threat of force and when a cultural exchange program will work better, or even better, knowing how to make them work together to achieve your goals.
It boils down to this really simple but super powerful equation. Hard power plus soft power equals smart power. When you combine them, your influence becomes so much greater than if you just used one or the other.
Let's make this real with an example. Take education. On the one hand, a great education system builds up your workforce, right? It boosts your economy in the long run. That's pure hard power. But at the same time, having world-class universities attracts students from all over the globe. That builds goodwill, cultural ties, and a positive image. That's classic soft power. So you have one policy, investing in education, that's doing two things at once. Now that is a smart strategy. All right, so after that whirlwind tour, let's pull back. What's the main takeaway here? Let's quickly recap what we've covered, because it gives you a whole new way to look at what's happening in the world. So we've really looked at 3 ways to see power. First, there's hard power. That's the ability to coerce, to force someone using military or economic might. Then there's soft power, the ability to attract using your culture and your values. And finally, there's smart power, which is the skill, the art of combining both of those to get the best possible result. And listen, this isn't just some abstract academic idea. This is a practical tool for you. The next time you're reading the news about some big international event, a trade negotiation, a diplomatic summit, whatever, ask yourself these questions. Are they using hard power here? Is this a threat? Or is this soft power? Are they trying to win hearts and minds? Or is it a bit of both, a smart power play? Once you start looking for it, I promise, you'll see world events in a completely different way. And that really leaves us with a big question to think about for the future. In our crazy interconnected world, where power isn't just in the hands of governments anymore, what's going to win out? Will the old playbook of hard power, of raw force, still be the dominant factor? Or will the future belong to the more subtle power of attraction and the wisdom to combine both? What do you think will define the next century?